All right, welcome and hello. It's the agenda this morning on Dominion Brokers Group. I am Chike Obogu. On the agenda this morning, over the past 25 years, Nigeria's borrowing from the World Bank has evolved significantly, resulting in changes of economic policy, development priorities, and financial pressures. Following substantial debt relief under the Paris Club agreement in 2005, Nigeria's external debt dropped sharply. However, by 2006, the country began re-engaging with the World Bank, securing loans for infrastructure, health, and governance reforms. Between 2006 and 2010, Nigeria obtained approximately $4 billion in World Bank loans, followed by another $4.3 billion between 2011 and 2014. These loans were primarily sourced from the International Development Association, the IDA, and also the World Bank's concessional lending arm. Under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration, Nigeria's debt to the world, or to the World Bank, more than doubled, rising from $6.29 billion in 2015 and $13.93 billion by 2022. You want to ask, what's happening? But this increase was driven by loans aimed at supporting economic reforms, infrastructure development, and social programs. In December 2020, notably, the World Bank approved a $1.5 billion loan to assist Nigeria in mitigating the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. But in 2024, Nigeria's debt to the World Bank surged by $2.36 billion, bringing the total to about $17.81 billion. These monies are huge. This increase was attributed to 6 newly approved loans targeting sectors such as healthcare, rural infrastructure, governance, and fiscal reforms. The largest of these was the $1.5 billion Nigerian reforms for economic stabilization to enable transformation. That's with the code name RESET. The development policy financing, which was aimed at supporting macroeconomic reforms and protecting vulnerable groups. Additionally, Nigeria spent about $689.44 million servicing its debt to the World Bank in 2024, up from $597.19 million in 2023. This reflects a growing dependence on multilateral support, with the World Bank accounting for nearly 40% of Nigeria's total external debt by the end of 2024. I hope you're following. As of early 2025, Nigeria is set to receive an additional $2.2 billion in World Bank loans across 6 projects, focusing on community resilience, support for internally displaced persons, health sector strengthening, and digital infrastructure development. These approvals indicate a continued reliance on World Bank financing to address development challenges and implement reforms. Joining me to break these down and to make some sense from this is in-house analyst John Izuchukwu. John, good morning. It's good to have you here again.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here, Chike.
All right. We've been looking at the World Bank loans and borrowings by the Nigerian government and the dependence on the financial institutions. Has the World Bank's monetary lending favored Nigeria's development so far?
Well, let's set the record straight. Countries all over the world borrow, and basically they borrow for development projects. they borrow when the generated revenue, there's a deficit in the budget, and they need to bridge the gap, they borrow for all of that. But you see, our story is a very different story because it is a widely known knowledge, a common knowledge at that the bane of our borrowing today is corruption. When we look at what we have borrowed and the equivalent of it in terms of developmental projects, particularly when you use the Human Development Index to measure what development is today in Nigeria, when you talk about healthcare, you talk about a good road, you talk about security, you talk about education, you talk about human capital development. And so when you look at those indices, you conclude that our borrowing may not have favored sufficiently the developmental project that it was intended to. And that calls to question as to where these borrowings are, have been channeled to. And given the fact that globally, for instance, the global perception of Nigeria in terms of corruption is still very high. In fact, last year, it was about 140, well, we ranked 140 among 180 nations. And part of it is that people sampled, where that the public service is evaded with corruption and bribery and looting of public funds. So this is still the very major challenge we have. But as to whether we are supposed to borrow, all countries all over the world borrow, even the United States borrow. They are one of the heaviest debtors as far as the World Bank is concerned. But then they are borrowing for infrastructural development. They are borrowing to improve their HDI and all of that. So, but that's the difference between us and them. So if you look at it in the overall, have we been really favored? I don't think so. Because looking at how much you have borrowed and what's on ground as equivalent in terms of infrastructure, we cannot say it is so.
But let's look inward and we see that most of these loans are used for infrastructure, as I said before, such as when you call road construction, you have healthcare, primary healthcare. You have all these things, and then you want to ask again, why are we not also looking inward, considering the fact that the Central Bank of Nigeria influences fiscal and economic reforms through loans tied to policy conditions, such as the subsidy removal, fiscal transparency, and deregulation? The World Bank is so dependent, or we depend solely on the World Bank to get loans that involve infrastructural development. Why don't we look inwards as a people?
Chike, we're still going back to the foundation. The discussion remains that when you look at it, we may not be able to fund all our developmental projects by ourselves. It's not as though we're not generating money. In fact, as at last year, we were told that the custom alone generated over 1 trillion naira. Now, even though that is true, but that is not sufficient to, put development project across the 36 states and across the 777 local governments we have today. So, in doing this, the government is doing its best to see if they can generate resource enough to do some of this, but they are not enough. And that's why they will continue to seek borrowing so that they can be able to deliver, the promised development to our communities and to Nigerians at large.
Well, if you look at projects being funded by the World Bank loans, which I read out earlier, including roads, power, education, healthcare programs, and then, yes, we know the federal government has tried as much as possible to make sure that they implement some of these things using the loans obtained. However, there has not been relative improvement so to speak, especially when it comes to the power sector and even the educational sector. So when you look at it, it's somewhat of a robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing, where you get these loans, but we're not seeing the impact in some of these projects that have been carried out.
Yes, in fact, when you look at some of the works of a budget, for instance, the civil society who pays close attention to how government spends money, you will see that over time they have taken government to court because there are several projects and several loans that were taken that we were not able to see them use that loan to deliver the projects. And that's caused to, the question that all Nigerians want to be answered. If you claim as the president of Nigeria today, for instance, that you have eliminated corruption to the barest minimum in certain sector, it will be clear because the benefit will touch down on every Nigeria. But the problem remains that corruption is still pervasive. There is nothing you can do about it unless you have a person, a leader who is himself corrupt free. Because you cannot be corrupt and want to fight a corrupt system. And there's a way the Nigeria system works. It's a cartel. For instance, Chike, if you are abreast with what happens at the port, Okonjo-Iweala saw how much corruption was inbuilt into the management of the Nigeria Port Authority. And she came up with the idea to clear the port so that people can have easy access to clearing their goods and all of that. But you see, it is the more bureaucratic processes you have, the more corruption you have. And so because people have been feeding fat over these bureaucratic bottlenecks over the years, they are not willing to let go. And so they will keep creating one impediment or the other so that it can facilitate corruption. And that is what we have not been able to see this current administration do, and I don't think they will be able to do that. Because you see, it is clear, you cannot manipulate a process and want to come reform the process. Because these are the major challenges of honest Nigerians who are looking at these issues and thinking, how do we resolve it?
Well, you are talking about corruption too, yes. But we can also look outside corruption and then look at maintenance culture. Many of the World Bank projects, especially when it comes to education, many schools that have been built by the World Bank project, the World Bank funds, how many of them today are still standing? Many of them are dilapidated. Why? Based on the people's maintenance culture.
You are right. We are poor in terms of maintenance culture. And that was why the other day when we celebrated the Workers' Day, I have always believed that the civil service are the forefront of reforming Nigeria. You can't get anything done as a politician if the civil service are not supporting policies you are bringing, because they are the implementers of the policies. So when you see people who, managing a public asset, the average attitude of a Nigerian is a public asset belongs to nobody. And so nobody pays attention to managing it well. And as a matter of fact, if you go to our universities, you will see the same culture from the people who are supposed to be the highest thinkers in our society. And so we need, again, to begin to champion a campaign, because this is not just about the government. Just about this facility you have here today, as beautiful as it is, it will remain this beautiful if people are able to manage it well. It's all over. It's the same everywhere. So we are saying that, maintenance culture is a good one that should be brought back. However, Chike, you cannot also talk about people maintaining certain facilities when the resource to maintain those facilities are not there. Because you must be able to provide for those maintenance. If, for instance, the handle of your door breaks and there is no money to fix it, you are waiting for budget year in, year out, and the budget is not coming, it will not be fixed. So it is a top-down arrangement. If the leaders are able to make resources available, then hold these persons responsible. Because, you see, we must take Nigeria as our property, as our own. this thinking or this mindset that Nigeria belongs to certain persons, so you are disinterested in how things are working, is a very bad attitude. Whatever belongs to us, wherever we work, is our property as long as we are there within that time. And so we need to put every effort to make sure things are working. And so this is also a call to the civil servants. You cannot sit back and watch everything get damaged, and then all of us are blaming the government for not doing what they're supposed to. Meanwhile, we have our role to play. So that's how it is.
Well, if you look at the COVID-19 era, where World Bank released some relief funds for Nigeria, you want to say, yes, these funds were supposed to be used for palliatives and all that. But there were also no safety nets. Today, we don't know how much was disbursed. We don't know how many people got this. Well, then, what relief itself came at that time?
That's why we're saying that Nigeria government have been largely insincere. Today, I heard the other day, you see about 8,000 or 10,000 Nigerians have benefited from the school loan program of this government. I can tell you categorically, if you go to Twitter right now, or to the Apex right now, and put it there, you may hardly find, except the party loyalists, Nigerians who can come up boldly and say we have. Because I interact with a lot of students, and they are from, very poor backgrounds. So you ask yourself, where do they get those figures from? Most time they are party members, they are party loyalists. They are not the average Nigerian on the street. And so when you see, they will give you figures that benefited from those social investment projects. But at the end of the day, these are not the average regular Nigerians who needs these resources. These are still party loyalists and their cronies, their family members. So we are saying, Chike, you see, it is, I know that we have smart people in government. It's just that I find it difficult to understand why they are not unable to bring, pursue a policy to a logical conclusion so that it will benefit everybody. I really find it difficult because you cannot tell me.
Well, some people will tell you it's so easy to find out because politics is all about interest, personal interest.
Well, but you see, can you imagine that late Chief Obafemi Awolowo was able to ingeniously develop a program that educated the majority of the Western Nigeria, and it was generating resources from the same people. That was when we had the cocoa plantations in Ondo State, the plantain plantations, the palm tree plantations.
Because you had people with a common goal.
That's what we're saying.
With a common
Why
goal.
is it difficult for this current Nigerian political dispensation for our politicians to be able to come up with these ideas and front it?
Okay, so now if you check that out, you find out that during the days of the Action Group and the days of Awolowo and co, there was this connection between the people and the politician. There was a common goal. The people had a chemistry. They wanted to develop their region. Unlike what you have today, there is a gap between the people and the politician. The same politicians that were voted in by the people shut their doors when the people, when they get to power.
Very true.
They no longer serve the people. The people then become their slaves. People serve them. So if you look at that generational gap, you'll find out that there's a whole lot of misnomer, and the gap is there. There's this void that's been created now between the politician and the electorate or the people. And so that may be what is affecting at this time.
Yes, it's part of it. But you see, I believe that it's a real opportunity to lead over 200 million Nigerians as a president. It's also a real opportunity to lead over 18 million persons in a state. So if you have the privilege of leading a people, I think it is right that you are able to, against all odds, attend to their basic needs. Because this is actually, you see, is actually not your money. You are just put there to manage the resource well, efficiently, and bring progress and development to the people. So it's a major concern. But again, you cannot also remove the place of people being ethnic bias, people trying to be, micro down development to their ethnic group. At the end of the day, you still get nothing, because you would have done all of that nepotic process and bring all of the resources to your people, and you look at your people within this big ocean of people. You are doing nothing.
All right, we'll go on this break, and when we come back, we'll be having more robust discussion. Now we'll be joined by a guest in the studio via telephone call this morning. Stick around. Don't go away. All right, welcome back from that break. We've been discussing borrowings from the World Bank and other foreign financial institutions and the future of Nigeria. And I've been speaking with John Izuchukwu in the studios here. Well, joining us via telephone call this morning is Barrister Folusho Olapo this morning. He's a legal practitioner and also a public affairs analyst, and also a financial expert too. Barrister Folusho Olapo, good morning. It's good to have you join us on the agenda.
Yes, good morning this morning in the studio. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, we've been speaking and talking about borrowings and the future of Nigeria. Nigeria has been borrowing so much from the World Bank, from the IMF, and other international foreign institutions. Well, the question now is, how will these borrowings help the Nigerian economy to become so buoyant, especially moving forward, looking at these imperialism, so to speak, the imperialist concept, especially when it comes to these foreign institutions, financial institutions?
All right. Thank you very much. One, let us be clear about one fact, that it is not an offense to borrow. But what is an offense is to borrow and then not utilize that borrowing for the purpose for which it is being borrowed. What is an offense there is to borrow on behalf of the country, and for the country not to feel any effect of such borrowing. That being said, let us look at it this way. Let's even start from this administration. Although past governments or successive government has been guilty of the same offense, but at least this is the administration that we are in now. Now, in May 2023, when Mr. President was taking, on the mantle of leadership of this country, he said he removed subsidy so that to have enough money for governance, and that Nigerians will stop borrowing. That is in May. But it is on record today that it appears that this government has been on a spree of borrowing. Look at it this way. Barely a month after the swearing in, Mr. President borrowed $750 million in June 2023 for power sector. 750 million naira in June 2023 for power sector. Then the question is this: have we seen any improvement in the power sector in this country? Your answer is as good as mine. Now, in the same June 2023, Mr. President borrowed, or Nigeria borrowed $500 million for women empowerment. $500 million for women empowerment. Can we mention, or can we pinpoint, or can we identify how many women have been empowered by that money? How many Nigerian women have been empowered by that women, by that loan? Then in July, the same year, 2023, Mr. President borrowed $800 million for social safety net. I think that's the one that is being cash transfer or whatever they call it. So how many families have that money helped? And where is Mrs. or Madam Betta Edu today that have an issue with that? Now, in September the same year, $700 million was borrowed for adolescent girls' education. Nigeria still rank the highest, almost the highest, in out-of-school children till today. So how has that amount, that loan, helped adolescent girls, assuming it was even used for adolescent girls alone? Now, in June 2024, federal government borrowed $2.25 billion for economic stabilization. Remember, the reason subsidy was removed is for government to be able to have much money for governance. And now we are borrowing money to stabilize God. We are now borrowing money to stabilize the same economy we said if we remove subsidy, we will be able to perform. And how has the economy been impacted since that September 2024? June 2024, when we borrowed 2.25 billion naira for economic stabilization. Now, in September the same year, 2024, $1.57 billion was borrowed for health, education, and power. Remember, the first loan that was borrowed was $750 million for power. Now, that is in 2023. And in 2024, $1.57 billion was borrowed for health, education, and power. Now, in March 2025, $632 million for nutrition and again education, and many more. So this brings the total to about $7.2 billion with additional loan from the African Development Bank, which goes about, I think, $500 million. You see, we have been borrowing, but there's nothing to show for this borrowing. At least the specifics were written. I am quoting First Newspaper, First News. That's where I'm quoting from. So you can see, it is not in the borrowing, but in the utilization of those loans. If we are borrowing to eat, if we are borrowing for monkeys and snakes to swallow, then to that extent, the future of this country is in jeopardy already, because we are already eating the lives of our children. I think even the NBS stated some time ago, I think late last year or early this year, that every Nigerian, any child born into Nigeria today is owing about 550,000 naira. Each one of us, as we are seated. Now there has been increase in that now. Maybe let's say $600 to $700,000 each Nigerian. So then you now begin to look at the GDP. Hello, are you with me?
Go ahead.
Okay. Then you look at the cost of living. Has cost of living changed? What of transportation? Has it changed? What of health? What of education? So what of housing? Even the infrastructures, what of roads? For instance, if you are traveling from this place, from Ibadan to Ilesha, your tongue will be in your mouth throughout the journey. Because I don't want to say that. Because it's not passable. It's not motorable.
Okay, Barrister Folusho Olapa. Barrister Folusho Olapo. If you look at, you're trying to break down these funds, these monies, and also look at what they're being used for. However, the rising payments, let's look at it from this angle. We are borrowing, we're also paying back. So if we are repaying, it also affects the domestic spending and devaluation of the naira, in the sense that the naira, which was about 150 naira to a dollar in 2010, is about 1,600 naira to a dollar this year, about 100% devaluation. And you also look at the funds, which often end up in corrupt channels, weakening the outcome. There is also the need for accountability and transparency by governments, if you want to say that too. However, most citizens are also unaware of the consequences of borrowing in their individual lives, especially when the funds do not affect their lives directly, and and they also affect the economic well-being and the overall welfare of the people. So how can Nigeria's economy become buoyant in this aspect, and especially by borrowing from these foreign institutions, financial institutions?
Okay, that is a bit. Now we have stated the reasons for this borrowing. Let's take energy, for instance. The first loan that was taken was for the purpose of energy, electricity. If we have been able to fix the energy sector, in fact, there will be hyper changes in the economy of this country. Because majority of those people that are riding Okada, or that have joined Yahoo, or that are doing one thing or the other, in fact, even resorted to crime, would have been employed. In fact, it is an aberration for only the government to be the employer of labor. In this country now, in those days when we were in secondary school, we used to do holiday jobs. During the 8 weeks holiday, long holiday, we call it long holiday then. You will travel from your village to the city and you will get a job very cheap. And you will have to work for those 8 weeks before you come back to school. And when you get back to school, and in fact, it was free education during the UPN regime. So why can't we have that anymore? So you can see that if we have been able to fix electricity in this country, there will be, in fact, increased employment. How many companies, multinationals at that left this country immediately, subsidy and the flotation of the naira? How many? We have Procter & Gamble, we have Metlife, Big Sham, we have a whole lot of them that left. And there are several Nigerian companies that went under just because of that singular policy. A policy of which Nigerians were not consulted before it was taken. This is a democracy. And the essence of democracy is dialogue. You have to talk and talk and talk, and we agree on something. Somebody will not just sit down inside one place and begin to reel out instructions. No. Autocratic governments do that. But in democracy, you have to involve the people. So every Nigerian today, whether we know it or not, that's why I stated earlier that even the NBS, National Bureau of Statistics, stated last year or late last year or early this year that every Nigerian, including a child that is being born into this country today, is owing about 550,000 naira. So without you doing anything, you have that burden of loans.
Okay,
Strangled into your neck.
Barrister Folusho.
And you are carrying it
Barrister
all about.
Folusho.
So until and unless we begin to use this loan for the specifics for which they are borrowed.
Okay.
Until we begin to hold people that are given assignments culpable. Until even it is not the federal government alone, we have to look at the state government too. What are the state governors doing?
Okay, Barrister Folusho Olapo, just hold on a bit. Also, here in the studio, John Izuchukwu. Now, he's talked about the problems. He has stated the facts, the problems there, which you also alluded to earlier on. Hold on, Barrister, hold on. Yes, you've alluded to the fact also earlier. However, what tracking systems...
Hello, I can't hear you, please.
Okay, just hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Okay.
Just hold on the line. So, John, here, what tracking systems can be employed to ensure such loans are actually invested in what they are meant for?
Yeah, for instance now, the Desiani loan that was to be repatriated back to Nigeria, you recall that the United States have refused to push that money to Nigeria directly. They want to get it into rural electrification and other projects directly to the people. And that just tells you our international image when it comes to finance, when it comes to managing finance. So, Chike, the problem is not that we do not have tracking systems in Nigeria. Just imagine how that international donors. I have friends today who are doing, running projects, funded by international funders. And these monies come into Nigeria, and CBN plays a ban on it, and they monitor how that the monies are being, dispatched to the owners. So it's not that we do not have systems. Is that we are sabotaging ourselves. If your account had never received the $50,000 before, if somebody sent you that money today, the bank will place a ban on your account. They will invite you over. Who is sending the money? What's it for? And so, why is it difficult for us we have the BVN, we have all of this, NIN, all of it put together. The sheer simple explanation is that Nigerians are sabotaging Nigeria. We are not willing to allow these processes work. Why do you have the EFCC? Why do you have the ICPC? What is the CBN doing? But you see, all of this put together, if we are not willing to make it work, it cannot work. These systems don't work by themselves. It's human beings who manages them. So if you borrow from now till tomorrow, if you're not willing to commit those borrowing to what it is meant for, you will still get nothing. And whether you put in FBI to watch over us, Nigerians can circumvent any process. And that's what we are seeing today.
All right, Barrister Olapo, are you there? Quick one. What tracking systems do you think we could employ to, stop or checkmate? What tracking systems do you think we could employ? To checkmate these loopholes where monies are not are used for what is not meant to be used for. So how do we track it? And then how do we make sure that these monies, when we get these loans, we use these monies to actually fix what they are meant for?
Okay, I thank my friend and colleague there that just spoke. He said, what are CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, EFCC, ICPC, and in fact we have NFIU. All these organizations or agencies of government, what are they doing? In fact, he gave a very good example. If you have not received $1 million, naira, not to even talk of dollar, you have not received even 500,000 in your account before, and suddenly somebody just credited you with that money, it will be flagged immediately, and you will be called to come and explain how that money came to be. So I think even this administration have the presidential thing that they launched where someone can be tracking the event or how these monies will go. But does it work? How many Nigerians really know that they can go on internet and track? And even if you track and you whistle blow, what have all these agencies done? In fact, I am so sure that every day EFCC and ICPC will be receiving petitions from Nigerians. Do they investigate it? How many of our sitting governors, senators, and House of Representative members are having one issue or the other based on corruption with ICPC and EFCC? So what happens to those cases? I just mentioned Mrs. or Madam Betta Etu. You remember that?
Yeah.
So what happens to that matter? Mr. the Interior Minister, Tunji Ojo, his name was mentioned at the time. Nothing was said about that again. So even if you are, what I'm trying to say is this, even if you are tracking and there is no consequence to such action, you reported this person does this and nothing happened. In fact, they will just be making jest of you. They will be saying, in fact, like somebody said, if you are not convinced, you can go to court. But there's a Kenya proverb that says that that a person that has a member in a tribunal will not mind anybody taking him to that tribunal because he knows he has somebody there. So politicians will be very eager for people to go to court because they know at the end of the day how many corruption matters have been in court for years. We have the likes, in fact, I don't want to mention it, there are so many. So if there are no consequences to action, then to that extent, everybody will be behaving the way they think they can. If you see money and there's nothing, somebody stole some money and was building about 753 exotic buildings, and that person is still probably running about in the city of Nigeria. Though it's having issue on that, what happens to that? Had it been queried? Had it been ensured that even the source of that money, of course they've gotten the houses from him, but it shouldn't stop from that. He should be punished for doing that, for even doing it alone. Somebody in China, there was this news in China last year that a bank director was sentenced to death. Why? Because he influenced the giving of a loan to a particular client of the bank. Can you imagine? These are where laws work.
All right, but Barrister Olapo, because of our time,
there are several laws in this country.
Yeah, Barrister Olapo, because of our time,
yes,
you've talked about you're going towards the law now, and then that's where headed to, and now it's the legislative arm of government. And then what I would ask is, how does the legislative arm of government in this country ensure that borrowing is actually scrutinized to avoid over borrowing and also inflating the need of what develops the country? Let's get your thoughts on that.
You see, sometimes it's not even the law. There is an agency or an arm of government that has been saddled with the responsibility of overseeing the executive, and that is the legislature.
Yes.
What are the legislature doing? We have several laws, like I said, in this country. And like my brother there said, we have ICPC, we have VFCC, we have NIFIU, we have several. We have a whole lot of anti-corruption, in fact, scattered in several laws in this country. So, but from the beginning, we have to look at it from the beginning. If a request for loan goes to the National Assembly, the National Assembly took time to investigate and verify what was done with the ones that had already been taken. But what would the National Assembly tell us? That whatever Mr. President brings, they will accept, they will approve. And they will be angry if people begin to call them rubber stamp. No, in a sane crime, the legislature is the eye of the people in government. And that is where it appears that they are almost higher in rank than the two other government arms of government, because they make the law, they oversee the executive, and in fact can impeach Mr. President if he misbehaves. Can you imagine? But our own here in Nigeria, somebody who is, request for loan, and without even looking at it, okay, this loan is for education. Our educational sector is bad. Then let us approve it. Whereas a loan has already been approved, probably maybe for health. Did they take their time to look at what happened at that health sector and ask questions why things were the way they were? But we don't. So the executive that knows, the executive is supposed to enforce these laws, and they are the one breaching the law. So will you enforce a law that is against you? No, and that is why it appears that we do not have laws in this country. And those of them that managed to get to the court and even were convicted, the past administration will have to give them presidential pardon. So what are we talking? What are we talking about? So meaning that even if you are convicted of corruption in this country, and you are in the good book of Mr. President, then you could be pardoned, and that would be all. Okay. So irrespective of whatever laws that have been done, that may have been there.
All right, thank you, Barrister Olakpo, for sharing your thoughts this morning. Because of our time, we just need to wrap things up here. Thank you for featuring on the agenda this morning, Barrister Olakpo. Barrister Folusho Olakpo there. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your one.
All right, turning back to you, John, in the studio here. Our legislative, just in 10 seconds, can they do anything to fixing this malady?
Yeah, they have the powers to do, but unfortunately what we have is a rubber stamp legislature.
Okay.
Until we have the separation of power clearly delineated so that people can actually act within the provision of the Constitution, we may not have that achieved.
Are there other alternatives for heavy borrowings?
The alternative is if we can become productive.
Okay.
If we're able to produce for ourselves and export what we produce, then we'll begin, our GDP may increase, and then we'll begin to, stop borrowing as much as we do today.
All right, let's get to the conclusion of this. And first of all, we'll say it's that borrowing is not a crime. It isn't inherently bad. Management of these borrowings is what is key. Nigeria's challenge isn't access to funds, but how to convert capital into prosperity without institutional reform, transparency, and local empowerment. Loans will continue to feed cycles of corruption and dependency. But to break free, Nigeria must bet on people, not just policy. Empowering youth, entrepreneurs, local communities, and building resilient institutions. Only then can real development take place. It also goes to other African countries that are in this same dilemma. Let us keep this conversation going. Do follow us on all our social media platforms. On Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram is at Dominion Broadcast. And on the app X is at Dominion Cast. I walked alongside so many people this morning. My name is Chike Ubogu. Do have a great day. Stay safe.